So, news has increasingly emerged that Major League Baseball is really trying to push to get games underway as soon as possible, potentially even in May. The latest idea being to host the whole season, or at least part of the season, in Phoenix, Arizona, where, of course, we've got 10 spring training facilities, and Chase Field, the home of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Sounds exciting at first glance, but man, there are some monumental hurdles at play here. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Please do run down and subscribe below if you have not done so already. We're doing videos every day. You gotta be on notice to get them. All right, let's get underway. Now, it goes without saying that broader public health considerations are the number one priority here for everyone. That simply has to be the case. But it is important to think about when and how all of our different activities can come back online, and baseball is no different. In some regards, thinking about a season played entirely in the Phoenix area is actually kind of exciting. It might have a stripped-down travel team, old school kind of a feel to it, and you can imagine it being a pretty interesting event, one that could really bring a lot of joy to folks at an important time. But that being said, that's a big ask when you're talking about a long period of time to stage an entire season, and especially when you're talking about it getting underway as soon as May, which is, of course, just 1 month or so away from where we stand right now in the middle of a pandemic that still hasn't shown any signs of really abating. Now, I'm all for creativity and thinking outside the box in this situation, but trying to ramp up this soon just seems like a recipe for disaster. Most importantly of all, of course, it just seems too soon to be getting back to this kind of activity. The reason is we may not even be at the peak yet, folks. We do need to bear that in mind, and that's especially true of places that haven't been hit quite as hard just yet. We still don't know exactly how this disease is going to behave. Remember, we're still just getting a hold of the science of dealing with this deadly disease. There could be many important developments still to come. We don't know when that will happen. We don't know when those will be made widely available. Treatment, testing, all that kind of stuff. So to be putting society's resources into baseball at this point or in the near future just seems a bit premature. So that's one issue here, the fact that Arizona itself could actually be facing a peak caseload in May. And then there's another issue with the timing, which is that the earlier you try to ramp this up and the longer you try to make the season, the more you're going to have to include a lot of contingency plans for a lot of really, really unknown things. And in this case, that means pretty much everything about the season would be impossible to predict in advance. Now remember, part of the idea here is that playing the games all in one area would allow the league to stage a lot more contests in a tighter time frame than usual. But part of the idea here also is that you'd be sort of keeping away this virus from the play itself. You'd be keeping players and everyone else involved away from it, including, I guess, their families. And so we're now talking about a really long period of time under isolation. We're talking about cramming in games, possibly while straggling through a lot of difficulties. We don't know how this will all go. We don't know what the state of the nation and the world will be in. And trying to do all that could really end up being counterproductive if you start too soon. And let's talk about this idea of sort of walling off the game from the outside world. We're not just talking about players, we're talking about executives, training staffs, all the logistical people that would be required even without fans at the park. You're talking about scouts, medical support, emergency medical. We're talking about umpires. And please don't mention robo-umps. We're not ready for robo-umps to be thrown into the mix right now. We got to have an ump calling balls and strikes. There's just an awful lot to account for there. Now, yes, ultimately, we may need to try to stage baseball games and do lots of other activities without foolproof 100% protection from the coronavirus. But we should wait to do that until we have proven treatments, until we have the capability to test and trace cases that do arise, until there's a clear protocol in place in the event that there is such a situation. I'm not so sure the league is going to be ready, that the country is going to be ready to deal with that so soon. And let's be sure we're clear. If indeed this happens, there would be a lot of potential to draw resources away from broader society just when it needs them most. We can look across the Pacific and see that the KBO, that's Korea's top league, is seemingly on track to start play soon, but that's because they have a broader public health infrastructure in place that is dealing with this disease, and they're able to do a lot of things that we just aren't yet. Now, one other thing that people have been mentioning in regard to this idea is the heat. Yes, that famous Phoenix heat, which is supposedly, I've never experienced it in the dead of summer, just something that is quite different from anything else. Now, of course, folks in that area are able to get around and go about their lives. They're able to play sports. It is possible to imagine it could pose some troubles, but it also may, in this case, be a feature. Of course, it's worth bearing in mind the science still completely developing on this front, but you almost wonder if the league is getting ready just in case coronavirus ends up wilting under the heat, which is still something that's possible, even if not maybe in general summer conditions. What about the extreme 100+ degree heat of Phoenix? Who knows? Perhaps that's the best way to think of this. The league is getting ready just in case there is sort of a rare window to act. Maybe the league is getting this talk started to get the logistics in place. You could certainly imagine Phoenix being a great place to play a ramp-up early stage of the season, or perhaps if there's only time for a much shorter, say a month-long kind of a campaign that could happen in the fall. So it makes sense for the league to be thinking about logistics, and it makes sense for the league to be thinking creatively here. It's just that, in my view, when you're talking about 6 months of action in one place, keeping guys away from their family, keeping the coronavirus outside of this sort of shell of the game, it's awfully, awfully tough to envision. Now, maybe I'm just being a pessimist here. I'm not sure. Go down, let me know in the comments. Please do hit the like button, and please do be sure to subscribe to our channel. We have a lot more videos to come.